So we're here today with Matt James, Brigadier General Matt James, um, former Battle Company Commander, Hound Company Commander, and Attack Company Commander here at 520 Infantry, Sykes Regulars. Sir, welcome. Glad to have you here with us today.
Thanks, Jim.
So we want to dive in and talk about the time that we spent in Bakuba, mostly, but to kind of frame that and your experiences in your life and everything leading up to it. Kind of like to get to know a little bit more about you and how you found yourself in boots.
Okay. So I'm from Seattle. Went to University of Washington, and my dad was a Vietnam vet, and while he served honorably and received a couple Bronze Stars, he wasn't real hot on talking to me about the Army, just because it was a different era, and he had been drafted. It was hard. So I didn't have a lot of veteran influence in my life, but I'd met some of our OTC kids while I was at University of Washington. I was pretty interested in what they're doing. But I got interested too late, so I went to law school, to Gonzaga, and after 1 year law school and not enjoying it, joined the Army, because that's something I'd always thought about. I just didn't have a lot of people to talk to. So I got in the Army in 1998. Went to basic, went to OCS, IOBC, now BOLIC, and Ranger School, whatever, and went to 10th Mountain. It's my first duty station at Fort Drum, New York. We went to Kosovo. That was our big deal. This was pre 9/11.
Who were you with 10th Mountain?
214 Infantry, Golden Dragons. Yeah. And I had real formative experience. We didn't have a lot of equipment in a good way. So we were in the field all the time training. It was cold. It was a good way to learn your field craft. It was a good place to cut your teeth. Came back, went to the career course, and got assigned to Fort Lewis, Washington. They were standing up the Army's First Striker Brigade, 3-2 SBCT.
So was that in like 01, 02 time frame?
I got here in March of 03.
March of 03.
So I think they've been standing it up since 2001.
Okay.
Lots of tests for this Striker Brigade.
So was it really just about kind of forming like a deployable unit at that point? It was beyond experimentation.
Yeah. So again, I was just getting here. They had been going through 2 years of rapid fielding and testing. And so by 03, as the Iraq war was kicking off and the Afghan war was already ongoing, we were just in the field a lot here. And I think we're kind of past testing and more into refining SOPs and understanding how the Stryker would fight and get at, I don't know what month we got orders for that deployment, but we knew we were going that later that fall in 03.
So what were you doing then? You were a captain at that point,
yeah.
Career course qualified.
Yeah. The long story is that the Army really wanted this to succeed. That's my belief. So we were stacked with captains waiting on command, and I was like, seniority wise, like number 20 of like 22. So I went to the brigade staff. I had never been a staff officer before. So I had never seen PowerPoint before.
Not even when you were, pre-captain back in 10th Mountain, you didn't, no time.
No computers in the platoon CPs and no time in the S shop.
Wow.
I've been a rifle platoon leader, a rifle company XO, and then I was scout platoon leader in HHC up there. Yeah, so I go to the career course, and it was just from a fire hose when I got here, because things were going so fast, and the O4s, the Iron Majors, were just running us ragged, trying to get everything successful. And so we went to there was an NTC rotation in 2003, there was a JRTC rotation in 2003, and there was a massive field exercise here in 2003, and they were shipping Strykers via C-17, via rail. They were testing everything to get Strykers back and forth to these training events. And then I think I stepped out the door in October or November of 03 to Kuwait.
Okay.
On the brigade staff as an assistant S3 in the operations shop.
So you were at the forefront of all the, you know, the future operations that were going to be happening throughout the entire brigade as they cut their teeth as the First Striker Brigade in combat. What was that like?
Well, by December, battalion commanders and the brigade commander were already changing out company commanders. I didn't have very good visibility on it, but there was a rapid change. So I went from the S3 shop to the brigade TAC, which was normally about 3 strikers, brigade commander, sergeant major, some fires guys, and a few of us that were. So I was kind of like the captain, almost like an aide de camp. Planning all of our trips to go visit units, our routes, everything around Iraq. We drove to Mosul from Kuwait. Did a relief in place with the 101st Air Assault Division.
The brigade
did a rip with a division.
Took over a division.
Yeah, in Mosul.
Okay.
So it was, as we like to say, or as the Army likes to say, an economy of force, meaning everything shrunk down,
right,
the footprint up there in Mosul. And they had things pretty tight when we got there. There wasn't, at the risk of anybody who did get hurt or anything, things were fairly calm, at least for the first couple months. That spring, so again, I'm getting into the position around December, January. That spring, around April, things went pretty wild. As soon as it got a little warmer, anti-Iraqi forces, whatever we want to call them, we had a lot more troops in contact. I actually got hit by a little piece of mortar shrapnel that spring. One of my good buddies, John Wheeler, got hit twice that spring. His driver died during a convoy from, I think it was Tel Afar to Mosul. So yeah, things started to heat up, and I was seeing a lot because I was with the brigade commander. Brigade commander's not trying to get right in the middle of firefights, but right. We visited a lot of units that were, to include 520, that were, in the mix.
Who was the brigade commander during that?
Mike Rounds.
So that's got to be pretty fascinating to be right at the seat of power for the brigade, like knowing everything that's happening, moving, shaking throughout the country or throughout the area of operations that the brigade covered. Was that, I know you mentioned Afar, but what were the extents of the brigade's reach in terms of their AOR? Was it?
Yeah. So my memory sometimes fails me a little bit, but Afar was like, I'll say 45 minutes kind of to the west of Mosul. Yara West was south, probably 45 minutes. And that's where some of the aviation assets were. We changed units a few times. I know the FA 137 was down there for a little while as well in Key West. Aviation, and then I know we went up. We didn't have troops up there, but we went up to Dahuk in what's kind of called Kurdistan, right, to visit with I'll call them Iraqi army forces, like Kurdish, that were easier to work with than some of the folks in Mosul,
like the Peshmerga.
That was one group, but they also were becoming part of the Iraqi army as well. So they had a couple different outfits. I'm struggling to remember what was east, probably more to Kurdistan. I never got down to Kirkuk, but yeah, so we were on the road a lot. The brigade commander wanted to get out of the talk, which was in Mosul, and he wanted to see the units, and I think the staff wanted us to get on the road a lot too. They wanted to be able to do staff stuff because they were working a lot of civil military type operations. The staff was working a lot of non-kinetic stuff, things that the 101st had kind of set up to normalize the environment up there.
Hearts and minds.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I say normalize for the population.
For the population. Yeah. So were there any, major, I know you mentioned Afar, and, just from my history being in 520, I've heard a bit about the history of this battalion and its exploits during that first deployment.
Yeah.
in Tal Afar. Is there anything that jumps to mind of?
Uh, yeah. So Charlie 520 was in Tal Afar, and then 114 Cav was, I think it was actually called Warhorse. They had a airfield not too far from there, but they were doing stuff more out towards the Syrian border.
Mm-hmm.
They were kind of doing more stuff outside the urban areas. Charlie, therefore, had this city that would become, very violent over the years, and eventually, a couple of years later, they brought a whole regiment, not us, to lock that place down because it was kind of a, I won't call it just a smuggling route, but almost like a way for terrorists, bad folks to get from other places, maybe like such as Syria, to Tal Afar and then to Mosul, and then maybe south to Baghdad or Bakuba or other areas. And anyways, that was a main route for folks to come in at. And again, Charlie 520, 150, 160 guys were, holding that city down pretty well.
For scope, like how big of a city is that? Maybe either size or population.
Yeah, without my Wikipedia, I'd guess
what it would be comparable to.
I think it'd be about 150,000, 200,000 maybe.
So not a huge city,
no.
but just but big enough.
Big enough. There was only a couple of routes in and out, so if we were coming with anything more, they always knew we were coming.
The terrain out there is kind of flat, or
yeah, I don't believe that was built on a river. I mean, there's stuff like if you go further, like Mount Sinjar, which was in the news a couple of years ago, for all the Assyrians, I believe were stuck there from ISIS. So I wouldn't say just completely flat. There was stuff in the distance out in Mount Sinjar.
So, throughout the rest of that deployment, did you just continue to stay on the staff? I know you said that there were a lot of company commanders that were changed out, due to reasons that you didn't have oversight on. I mean, was there anything that was like your turn was coming? Was there anything that you were being groomed for? Anything you were asking for, looking for?
No. I say that because it was the place to be humble. And again, they had been doing it kind of by seniority. I didn't know what battalion I'd eventually go to. I mean, obviously I wanted to get into command. I was just grinding, trying to make sure the brigade commander got where he wanted to go. When we'd get back, the staff would be asking me, "What's the boss want? What'd the boss see?" Because they didn't always want to ask him directly. And then when we go visit the battalions, you're trying to make that as friendly as possible too, because you might be working there in a month, a year. I didn't know. So really, I had no foresight on whether I'd go to 520, 123, 23. I had no idea. And Colonel Rounds, he had a lot going on. He was not talking to me about where I might go or what
your career moves,
what my future was. Yeah, no, it was too busy.
Okay.
And the battalion commanders were all busy. So we go visit them. They didn't say, "Oh, hey, Matt, would you like to?" No, there was no
Okay.
red carpet rolled out. No, everybody was just busy. Everybody was fighting.
Okay. So then you basically stayed in that role throughout the remainder of the deployment.
Yeah. I'll tell one kind of interesting story. We were out with 520 and I can't remember the town outside of, they surged the battalion somewhere outside of, Tal Afar, I believe. And I can't remember the name, but there was it was almost like a forest, and they were clearing this wood line, let's just say from south to north. And they had inserted their scouts shadow on the north end to kind of watch for any squirters or anybody who might, be entering the battlefield or leaving it. Well, anyways, I know there was one guy from Bravo who got shot, Sergeant Gamble. He lived. He was a squad leader at the time, I believe, in, I think it was First Platoon Bravo battle. Anyways, so we're monitoring the radio. They're taking care of their casualties. So again, the brigade TAC was kind of out there to listen, not to run the op. It was a battalion size operation. So somebody saw, it might have been air weapons team, saw 9, 10 people like in a defile on the north end. And they started asking the battalion, "Hey, do you want us to engage? These guys look like they have weapons, whatever." And I was kind of putting it together in my head, listening, obviously trying to stay out of the way. And I was like, hey, sir, I think those are our scouts. Anyways, they were danger close to engaging air weapons team on some of our own guys. And this isn't a me story, but I was mind mapping this kind of what the layout was. And I just said, hey, sir, I think that might be our guys. So he called down to the battalion and said, hey, hold off on the air weapons team engagement. Keep observing. Could have been a bad day. So that's one story I remember where I actually was a little piece of the action, kind of involved. Other than that, we ripped with 125, who was the Army's second SBCT. They got there, did a bunch of riding around with them, kind of showing them the layout around Mosul. And, it was, I don't have a ton of, again, I was like a fly on the wall, battle captain, TAC OIC, whatever you want to call it. And, just collected information, trying to do my job, trying to survive with all the other captains, because I'd come back in the evening or the next day or whatever, and all the captains were grinding hard because the majors were grinding hard because the battalion commanders, the XOs, the brigade commander were pushing hard.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you came back. How long did you stay in a staff role? I can't imagine that, all the captains that had commanded throughout the course of that deployment.
Yeah, we got back like in around, I think, October, a bunch of leave, block leave, whatever. Right. I think I got to 520 in March of 2005. I think that's when I finally got assigned. And I came down here because we're in the 520 headquarters today. And I went into the battalion staff as a battalion AS3. And to kind of speed up some of this story, I was still 1.5, 2 years out based on the guys that had taken command. And a guy named Bob Leisman had taken Bravo 520. And then I think we got notification of our next deployment, which would be like in 2006, and this is 2005. And he was in command of Bravo 520. And in sometime that summer, him and his wife decided that he was going to get out. He was driving hard enough from the first deployment. And so I got to go into, took command of battle at an EIB site in August of 2005. So I took command with just a bunch of all of our soldiers out there doing EIB, gathered them all in. Colonel Townsend, who was the new brigade commander, was there and slapped me on the back and very short speeches, and that was it.
Do you remember what site that was that you were on?
I think it was down by Scouts Out Gate.
Okay.
I think it was, that's where a lot of the EIB stuff was, down south of Scouts Out, which is not too far from here. And what was really cool about coming in August of 2005, other than taking command, which was fantastic, was that I got to know the guys through the train up for the next deployment. So I got that pre-deployment look as a company commander, not in the middle of a deployment, but on the front end, because we deployed, I think, in June of 2006, June or July. So as you guys came in, as lieutenants, you guys were coming in left and right. I was building my team. I know you interviewed Sean McCaffrey yesterday. I remember him showing up. Tim Price, Harry Cromer, Phil Schneider was already there. These are some of the platoon leaders. And getting to know my platoon sergeants. Ray Hernandez was my first sergeant, had a really well-established company, battle company, had a great reputation, great NCOs. And a lot of that, I attribute to Ray Hernandez just being a fantastic trainer of NCOs. And I would see you guys in attack company, First Sergeant Montgomery. Hank Barnes was company commander, a good friend of mine. And, watched you and Tom Gaines and, all you guys develop, Eric Williams, Corey Oliver. I got to see you guys through. I know we went to Yakima at least once. I did a rotation in JRTC as a observer controller for the Alaska. Was that 173rd for their Stryker unit, went down there.
Right.
So it was busy. We were in the field a lot. And I think we were all pretty excited to go back, as weird as that seems. I think a lot of us were, felt like we were a pretty solid organization.
Yeah. I remember, we met up maybe a year or two ago in Philadelphia. Had a good time there, touring the sites of the birth of our nation,
Within the
Liberty
shadow
Bell.
of Freedom Hall.
Within the shadow of Freedom Hall, we sat there and broke bread. And I remember you saying specifically, or speaking to the training specifically, how reflecting back on the fight that we ended up later on in Bakuba, you can attribute a lot of our success to the training that was done during the workup for the deployment. Being that it wasn't necessarily just all coin, which was kind of the push, but it was more of some of the kinetic stuff.
Yeah. No, that's great, Jim, because I wasn't sure exactly where you're going with that. Because I would like to first attribute a lot of our success to the fact that the Army, I know First Corps was involved, allowed a lot of our NCOs and soldiers to stay in the unit, meaning they didn't all PCS to other duty stations. So we had an organization. Many guys have been here since 01, 02, training on Stryker with these units, not moving around, promoting within their companies, within their battalions. So first and foremost, I think the continuity was crucial to a lot of our later success. And then second, so the battalion commander here, Bruce Antonia, and I'd say the brigade commander, Steve Townsend, they said, hey, they didn't, there was a lot of counterinsurgency classes you could take at the time, learn little Arabic words, learn how to sit in somebody's house and drink tea or chai or whatever. But their belief was, hey, if we can fight, meaning we're going to continue to do live fires, we're going to continue to lob mortar rounds, we're going to continue to shoot artillery, we're going to shoot our strikers, we're going to use all of our weapon systems, and we're going to train lethally because we think we can back off if we need to, but it's hard to ramp up if you don't get that on the front end. So yeah, a lot of the training that lead up to summer of 06 was kinetic, live fires, team, buddy team, platoon. And then not a live fire, but what was pretty cool was 520 went to the field and we're doing our field exercise. We're out here at JBLM for 4 or 5 days. And in the scenario, the field training exercise, we get some intel. And the intel says, hey, the bad guys are in Umatilla, which is down the Washington-Oregon border. Okay. And then we were told to go. And we didn't know. This was completely secret, meaning like nobody, I mean, maybe the battalion commander knew, but like nobody knew we were doing that. So we went right from the field at JBLM and drove straight down through the night. I think we refueled at a Portland National Guard Air Force field or something like that, and then drove to Umatilla and the Columbia River and did an attack that morning. And 230 infantry was the op 4, and they had kept a tight lip. We didn't know, and we went right into an attacked them at the Umatilla site, and then got the next piece of intel, which was go to Yakima. And so we drove from Umatilla up to Yakima. So we basically circled the whole state within a couple of days over like a 2-week field training exercise. And this was all the kind of stuff that Steve Townsend loved to design, was unknowns, ambiguity, training you to think on the fly and not be prepared for the next thing, but being able to come up with a plan for the next thing.
Wow. I mean, so I wasn't here for that. I came much closer to deployment, and just reflecting upon what our deployment became after we went down to Baghdad. I mean, that sounds like Colonel General Townsend had a crystal ball as to what exactly this brigade was going to be doing.
That's a great point.
Because wow, that really makes a lot of sense to me. Learning that.
I'll just tell a little story here because it's kind of funny. He was pushing us for security 24 hours a day. You're never out of the box. You're never. So we were at the end of that field training problem. I think we did a CalFX at the multipurpose range complex up there at Yakima. So we did a company live fire in the very last thing, and we were in our alpha afterwards. getting ready to drive back the next day. And, we had all the strikers facing out, and we had guys up, manning stuff. I don't know what the percentage was, but Colonel Townsend snuck into our perimeter, found a couple guys in beanies instead of Kevlars or, Mitches, and a couple guys smoking at night. And he tuned us up, or tuned me up pretty good for not. I mean, this is the end of 2 weeks. We're on top of the world. We thought we'd accomplished a ton, and we had. But his point was, hey, never let your guard down. I told you guys, 33% security, whatever he had put out at the time. And it was like 3 a.m, and him and Sergeant Major Deuce sneak into the perimeter and find a couple guys on guard, but with beanies on.
Not doing the right thing.
Yeah, Army stuff.
Yeah. Wow. So aside from those, a couple of stories that you share about some of the training, was there anything else that was, memorable, anything that stuck out that, knowing what having experienced the deployment that you did in Iraq? I mean, whether it be from Mosul and, we'll unpack the rest of that, Mosul, Baghdad, and Bakuba. Was there something that, the chips were down and you were like, man, I'm glad we did that before we left?
Honestly, I can't remember a training event. We had some good esprit de corps stuff around here, around 520. Had good LPDs. We had good officer calls, meaning they were productive. We had a Colonel Townsend gave all the first company commanders and above a class on discipline and initiative, and shared trust, mutual understanding. Broke us all into teams. We did a bunch of vignettes over the former O Club, the Cascade Club, I guess it's called. And all those events, there was a different vibe. And I think it's because we were no longer just the Army's First Striker Brigade combat team. All new staff. Some of the battalion commanders had been S3s on the first deployments. There was, again, good continuity. And so the staffs were calmer. The battalion commanders were calmer because I think they had just less pressure to prove this new formation. It had already been proven. And that trickled down to all of us as far as morale, and you didn't feel as beat down the second time, because I think people just knew their roles better. It was less discovery learning and more, no, this is how we fight. This is the how we fight book. Every battalion had one, had their SOPs established. NCOs knew their SOPs inside and out.
Was this any different of a vibe, of a feeling than what you had experienced previously when you were with the 10th Mountain? Or, I would say maybe it could be attributed to the fact that, during that point in time, the Army was doing Kosovo, Bosnia, multinational force observer. This was full GWAT, global war on terror time.
When we got notified for Kosovo, it was early 2001, pre 9/11. We were excited. I mean, we were excited because there wasn't any wars going on. We were excited to go. So we trained hard and went, and it was a pretty slow rotation. Things were pretty calm there by, 2001, 2002. 9/11 happens while I'm in the box at JRTC, getting ready to go to Kosovo. And we kind of thought, hey, we're all trained up. We're all equipped. We're at 110% strength. They'll send us. And nope, they kept us on the Kosovo thing. So we went over there. We were watching the news. Again, things were pretty slow there. We were wishing we were in Afghanistan, but so I'd say the vibe was, it was good, but there was no wars going on when we started that training. So it was just solid fundamental Army training. And so the vibe by 2006, 05 was like, this is the real thing. We've lost. We have stars on the wall for never forgotten right here behind us for people we lost. So we knew it was, stakes were a little higher than say they were for when we went to Kosovo.
So interesting that you mentioned that you were in JRTC, the Joint Readiness Training Center in Fort Polk. During 9/11. Shortly thereafter, other units from the 10th Mountain.
7 and I believe it was 431.
were they part of, a similar training cycle to do like a Kosovo mission, or did they just?
No. And so Colonel Townsend just coincidentally was the battalion commander at 431. And my recollection as a young lieutenant was in order to get to 110% strength to go to Kosovo, we had taken soldiers from a bunch of other battalions in 2nd Brigade, 10th Mountain. So they were not in the same training cycle. And my recollection is that at least 431 was like at 80 or 75% strength when they had to get to Afghanistan in October of 2001, having like a less than a month's notification. But Steve Townsend was the right guy, I'm sure, to take those guys over there. And I don't know as many of the folks from 187, so not to leave them out of the story, but they were down the road a little bit from us. That was I think they were in 1st Brigade. We were all in 2nd Brigade.
When just to kind of capture a little bit more of your personal feeling on 9/11 and your sentiment. I mean, obviously you're still here today in uniform. Well, not here today in uniform, but you're still in uniform serving our country today. What did 9/11 mean and feel to you as a young platoon leader in the United States Army at that time?
Yeah, well, like I said, we thought we were the most prepared. I mean, we were in that training pipeline to deploy. We'd had all the resources. And so there was a little frustration that we didn't go. But as far as, 9/11, if you recall, I wouldn't say it kicked off slow, but there were small special forces groups. The 2 battalions I mentioned weren't thrown directly into the fight. They went to Uzbekistan first and kind of held there for a while before they let the SF guys run the Northern Alliance. And so these changes, these talks about things like TSA in the homeland, National Guard units getting activated. Matter of fact, when we got back from Kosovo to Drum, there was a Massachusetts National Guard company that had been there for 6 months, like right after 9/11, but not given a mission, meaning everyone was activated. There were soldiers in airports. There was all kinds of crazy stuff going on. But as far as my feelings on 9/11, I guess we just didn't know how much it would grow. Mm-hmm. So I was obviously interested. You want to figure this out. Osama bin Laden, whatever, you want to eliminate that threat from Al-Qaeda. But I wouldn't say the threat was like super well known as far as how widespread, other than they had come here, 19 guys and 4 airplanes. So I didn't know yet what it would mean for my career, but you could see the country was changing because we were vulnerable. It was like Pearl Harbor, it was got attacked,
and you were in it,
and we were there,
in it to win it.
And the guys at JRTC, we stopped training momentarily, went to all the soldiers, said, "Hey, do you have any relatives in the World Trade Center? Do you have any relatives, work in the Pentagon, et cetera, et cetera?" And a lot of the guys just thought it was part of the scenario, like, because we were, this is no cell phones. This is pre-cell phones. Nobody had information in the field. And I just remember, no, I'm serious. Do you know anybody? Do you have any relatives? And it was just hard to get guys to understand what had just happened because we were in the middle of nowhere.
They didn't break training or anything for a day or two?
A couple hours. Back to it.
Wow. So I guess the last part that we were talking about was getting ready for deployment, going to Iraq in 2006, and reflecting back on some of the training that was leading up to it. Do you remember what your company set was going, or what your vision was for Battle Company going to Iraq, and where you were going to be, and how far out you knew where 520 was going to be and Battle Company?
They were going to Mosul. There's always discussions about how the Strykers are going to get there. I think they ended up going on heavy equipment trailers from Kuwait. Didn't know exactly where in Mosul. I don't remember doing a PDSS, like a site visit to Mosul. I do remember stopping in, I believe it was Taji, where they gave us an extra week of coin training from some practitioners. Probably got some updated
Coin is
counterinsurgency.
okay.
Sorry. Probably got some updated IED tactics, techniques, and procedures for how to, the different improvised explosive devices that were being used at the time. Again, this is '06. That stuff kept evolving, as you know, while we were there.
And that was the counterinsurgency folks were teaching that?
Yeah, it was a counterinsurgency academy. I believe some 3-star came in and talked to us as well. It was all kind of a blur, but it was still a lot of talk about hearts and minds and how do you get the population on your side. But yeah, and then we got to Mosul. I believe we were ripped with the 173rd Stryker unit out of Alaska. And, they took us around for a week or two, and things had advanced over those 2 years since the last time I'd been back. They had more cameras up on the traffic circles. They had cameras in the back of their Strykers. They had some counter IED type stuff on their vehicles. I think the Warlock and that stuff was just starting to, the Rhinos, the counter IED measures to avoid them in the Strykers. And yeah, it was that was a blur with the 173rd. But I remember we moved into Famerez, I believe, and kind of got our lay of the land. And then Battle Company, I believe, had kind of like the northwest part of Mosul. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, but attack had kind of the southwest. When we say west, we're talking west of the Tigris.
Right, correct. So what we were west of the Tigris for 520s area of operations. 2-3 Patriots were on the east side. And then we had, I believe, from south of Famerez, somewhere north of Q West, which was, I guess, 137 was again back there as well. I don't know what their battle space was like. And then we had Bronco Troop because I believe we lost
Charlie
Rock. Charlie Rock Company to Bronco prior to
which they did the first deployment too. So the Rock guys, the Charlie 520 guys, always felt like, what's wrong with us? Why do we keep getting given away from the headquarters? But yeah, did the same thing the first deployment. Bronco and Rock flip flop between 114 and 520.
Okay. So yeah, I believe battle was north of, I guess the route became Tampa turned into Santa Fe at some point. Remember the traffic circle?
Yeah.
I think the
Yarmouth.
Cloverleaf. Well, there was Yarmouth and then the Cloverleaf, and somewhere in between there they kind of split, and that was where our boundaries were.
Yeah. I just remember we had to transit through your battle space, so we were always talking. The attack platoon leaders, the battle platoon leaders, because we were always getting from res to, going through your battle space to get up north.
Mm-hmm.
Not too far, but and just all the neighborhoods up there. And then what was the intersection? Tampa and Barracuda?
Barracuda,
yeah. So
very famous song written about that intersection.
Yeah, so that's mainly what I remember about Mosul is they were hitting a lot of soft-skinned vehicles, meaning non-strikers, non-520 folks at that intersection. And we put out small kill teams. We put out ambushes. We tried to be within like 5 minutes there, and bad guys were almost always gone by the time we got there. I'll tell one story. There was I think it was a Buffalo that got hit, counter IED vehicle. It got hit that intersection. We raced up there, and it was kind of on fire, but all the guys were still in it. Like it was, I think we got some extinguishers, put out a bunch of security. Again, didn't find anybody, but had guys on all four corners. And my first sergeant, Hernandez, was banging on the back of the door, saying, "Hey, you guys got to get out." And they were kind of froze. It's like, "You guys got to get out." So he rips open the back door of that thing, and we start, we're consolidating, reorganizing, and we'd put out the fire, and he calls me on the radio. He's like, "Hey, Battle 6 and Battle 7. Say, what's up?" this thing runs fine. I'm gonna drive it back. And he drove it back to the fob. It had been hit by a whatever a car-borne IED was called at the time.
Oh,
VBED,
yeah, the
vehicle-borne IED.
Vehicle-borne or suicide.
Yeah, they'd driven into the front of the Buffalo, I believe it was. It had blown up. Everybody was fine. And it had been on fire, put out the fire, and then drove it back.
Wow. I think I remember hearing about that with him driving it back.
Yeah.
Was that, I remember there was a, it kind of seemed as though the insurgents in Mosul had a very good sense to when units were ripping out or conducting a relief in place with another newer unit. And it just, their activity kind of would spike some. And I can recall that we had a route clearance element. I think they were called Fido, that was there.
Sounds
and
right.
We might have switched around some point, but whatever the newer route clearance unit was, they were getting it pretty hard. Was that around that time you recall, or?
Yeah, again, my memories kind of accelerate to Baghdad and Bakuba because the Mosul stuff was fairly calm.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of our missions were dry holes, didn't find the guys we're looking for. I mean, we know we had a sniper issue up there. A couple guys got, Boma, Casey Mellon. I think we eventually got that guy because I believe I picked him up at the hospital. I think we got intel from the Iraqi police.
Mm-hmm.
We went and detained him and then handed him off to some secret organization or something. That was, the CIA guys were up there sometimes too. We had a couple missions with them. Nothing super sexy that I think the audience, because nothing came of it, but they rode in our Strykers and they had name tapes that said Cool Breeze.
I remember some of those guys.
Yeah. But I'm trying to think of all the different IED, counter IED. I do remember a story from Attack Company, which was pretty funny. So the Captain Barnes and First Sergeant Montgomery were driving one of your narrow streets in your AO, your area of operations, and they heard an explosion, and they circled back, and then there was another explosion, like on or near their Stryker. Well, turns out they'd hit a couple power lines and thought they were getting attacked.
Oh,
and so they were guns up, ready for a fight, and they actually hit it at least twice, maybe 3 times. I can't remember.
I think, John Cheek had a very good story about that. From he was in the back of his vehicle, the Fire Sport variant, where they were, I believe, out trying to find a way out on the west side of the perimeter of the city, basically to kind of skirt around to get up where Barracuda went out toward Route Santa Fe, to scoot in that way on it. And there were power lines out there. They hit a couple of times. It fried, I think it fried all the radios in 2 of the vehicles.
Yeah,
just from that.
Yeah,
and they were in contact.
They were in contact. We did have a fight at Tampa and Barracuda where we raced up there. Somebody was in contact, and this is where, in war sometimes where the communication is key. I was on the ground with one of my, it was first platoon battle, and we were ready to storm into a house because we thought the guys might still be there that had attacked some soft skin vehicles. And just as we're getting ready, we've dismounted. Well, first off, one of my snipers safely shot over my head, but I didn't know he was going to shoot. So, stuff was going on. There's a lot of gunfire, us shooting there, but nothing really shooting back, I think, yet. Anyways, from Attack Company, one of the PLs got there too, and he called it an air weapons team, which I didn't know about. And so just as about 9 of us, 10 of us were getting ready to charge into the building, this, I guess it was a Kiowa, came up over a building and shot a 2.75 rocket into the building 50 meters in front of us. I don't know. It was a surprise.
Not very well deconflicted.
No, that attack, that platoon leader was bold and unafraid, and he was going to take care of business. And we were danger close on that one. So that was interesting.
Was were calls like that up in Mosul where they made through the battalion net, or was there a different way that they were kind of deconflicted?
Yeah. So because the company battle spaces generally were pretty well known. The only time we would crosstalk, obviously, we were crossing boundaries or near each other's AOs, but this would happen so fast. I think that this guy was just in the edge of the attack battle space that was pretty close by, and so he just raced over. We had probably called up to battalion, said where we're going, what was going on, and that was so it was probably on the battalion net. He probably heard it and raced over there, unbeknownst to me or us. Yeah, I think me and Joe LaBrosse were on the ground, and we're like, that just happened. That rocket just went into that building right in front of us.
What'd you guys do after that?
I'm sure there was a lengthy AAR back at the battalion headquarters once we cleared the building. There was nothing there. I think we found a bunch of spent casings, that type of thing. And went back, and I'm sure me and Hank Barnes talked about it and battalion staff.
Probably led to a nice warrior council. Remember, we would have them every so often up in Mosul.
Mm-hmm.
It was almost kind of nice to be able to have some downtime to be able to talk about things and think while we were up there, as opposed to later on in the deployment. Just talking a little bit, you had mentioned some of the IEDs and some of the IED threats and some of our countermeasures that we used up in Mosul, the warlocks and the rhinos, things of that nature. What is your recollection of the IED threat when we were in Mosul?
Yeah, so there's a theory, and I think Jim Mapes, the ROC First Sergeant, was one of the first guys I heard say it, that Mosul was kind of a training ground. And this is why with the insurgency, we didn't have any huge fights up there, that the guys maybe coming in from Syria, wherever they're coming in from, and we'd go up there and test some IEDs or sniper techniques, and then head south to more populated areas or areas that they wanted more influence in. And so what we would see was kind of a variation in some of the IEDs, but not super sophisticated, because we think they were testing. So whether it was IEDs in trash piles or IEDs built into the curb, the V-bed we talked about earlier, the vehicle borne. Didn't really see a lot of anti-personnel IEDs up there that I recall. We didn't have like the crushed wire or the pancake IEDs that I recall in other places. Kind of standard. I don't think they were using the, as I call the infrared, kind of like your garage door opener will stop when the
passive infrared.
The passive infrared. I don't think they were using a lot of passive infrared up there. I think they were experimenting mainly with wired and non-wired detonated IEDs.
But radio control.
Yeah. Or maybe phone by that point, but not a lot of complex attacks from the enemy.
And how about the construction of the devices themselves? Was there any pattern to them or size or difference? Nothing huge that I recall, like in that 06 era, meaning no huge explosions. Strikers got hit a few different times and pretty much kept driving, or you lost a tire, replaced a wheel or two. Excuse me. Jim, I honestly don't remember much more about the IEDs other than that they were typically not lethal against us. And if you had one outside your Stryker, which I'm sure we all did, I don't even remember getting my bell rung that hard. That was fairly small. Right. So the time in Mosul, I can agree with you. It's kind of, maybe it was a little bit more significant at the time when you were there, but kind of it changed drastically toward the end of that year in 06, when close to around Thanksgiving, we got at least a warning order that we would be replacing the 173rd, who had been extended once we had deployed and taken over battle space in Baghdad, and that we would be going to relieve them and either assume their mission or take on a different mission, do recall the change of mission and what battle company's role was at that point?
So when we got called from Mosul to Baghdad, and when I say Baghdad, that's where we ended up doing operations, but we lived in Taji, which was just north. Did we stop in Anbar first en route?
So attack left a lot or further behind because we were a company-sized QRF for 2-3 infantry who was going to do a mission en route to wherever they were going to end up. I think they ended up at Bayat, but they were going to hit some targets in Lake Tartar. But other coalition forces in Iraq had hit them the night previously. Our mission was just to get to Taji.
Okay, so you never went out to Anbar. Okay, so I think I'm getting the timeline right. To Taji, or maybe rapidly after we got there, we get a call to go out to Anbar province, just out to the west, probably 45 minutes to an hour, to look for a downed pilot of some kind of fast mover jet, not a helicopter. Okay, not a lot of intel, like zero. We get out there, and the parts of the jet are still out in the field. We kind of pieced together the story because we're talking to the local population, which was small. This was not Fallujah. This was like a village. And, the jet crashed like 6 days ago. I mean, this is a pretty cold site by now, but we're looking for this pilot, and we're trying to put together the pieces. And then, there was some folks already here. So I think the Air Force, forget what their QRF, their rapid response is called for their like down aircraft missions, SAR, search and rescue, whatever. I think they'd already scoured the site. I think maybe some elements of a Ranger battalion or company had been there as well, just kind of piecing together from the population, but not getting any of this through our headquarters, just kind of on the ground. So it's a really unclear picture. So we're out there about 5 or 6 days, no action, no good leads on the pilot. No, I mean, his body, or if he's alive, he's dead, he's not there.
Missing.
And so we're getting packed up to leave, and we're probably just living out in the dirt, for that week. And, I forget what month that was, maybe November. And we got hit real hard on the way out of there. And they had these culverts under the roads that they had packed full of IEDs probably over the years. And once they figured out we were operating out there for a week, they finally showed up. We didn't see them do this. And they hit one of our MGS vehicles, Sergeant Hoover, and blew that thing out of the ground. No KAs in that one, but 3 guys severely wounded, Poppenhaus, Hoover, and I forget the third.
And you were saying that was which vehicle?
It was an MGS, an anti-tank guided missile vehicle, part of the MGS platoon is what we called those platoons. They all had 4-man crews. And so that thing was loaded with tows and other munitions, and we were trying to put the fire out. So there's a couple parts of the story. One, there's a bunch of guys trying to put the fire out, try to get the munitions off there so it didn't burn further or blow up. The tires caught fire. Really hard to put out tire fires. Guys are using the halon. They're using everything they got. Simultaneously, we're trying to evac Poppenhaus and Hoover at least. And Poppenhaus had, at that point, lost parts of both legs. And I remember, and I'm the company commander, so I'm calling. Sheriff is supposed to be the kind of the national level medevac.
Mm-hmm.
And they're on a single channel plain text or something should be easy. I'm calling, and I'm calling, and I'm calling. There's just no response. And the battalion TAC is somewhere nearby. They can hear me. They're trying to call. Nothing. Anyways, it took about 45 minutes to an hour to finally get a bird out there, even though it was pretty close to Baghdad. I don't know if somebody wasn't monitoring the radio. It eventually went through. Poppin' House made it, but I just remember sitting out there and being like, come on, like this guy, should we just drive? Should we just drive an hour to the nearest cache, combat service hospital, support hospital? Simultaneous to all that, putting out the fire, evacing those guys. Another squad ran down. There was a copper wire from that culvert. They ran it back to a house, and the guy was still there. So they detained one or two guys that had set it off from, I think it was about 600 meters away. So they'd seen our strikers. I believe they'd already had this stuff in the culvert for some time. They just got notified we're there. They hit us, detained a couple guys. Along with all that, Shadow was sitting on.
Shadow's
the scout platoon, so it didn't belong to me. And they're watching the route from Ambar to Baghdad. I'm trying to remember the name of that route. It's not Tampa, but it heads west.
Like Lincoln or Michigan or one of those?
Yeah, maybe. But anybody that's been out to Fallujah would probably know because it's one main route.
Okay.
So Shadow has a couple strikers. They're pulling security for each other. I wasn't there. This is after. And they had a deep buried IED under them. They sat there for 4 hours, 2 hours, 6 hours. I'm not sure if Sean talked about it yesterday, but somebody set that one off that had already been there, and they lost Billy Ferris. So we had 1K, multiple wounded that day, all for this week-long search for a guy who'd probably been gone on day one, the pilot. And it was just very frustrating that we didn't find the pilot, and then just as we're leaving, they hit us.
Did that, coming to the realization that, the roads had been seeded and were prepped for your exfil.
Yeah.
From being out there, did that change the route coming back? I mean, did you guys go off road? I mean, Stryker's a very capable vehicle. Did it?
Well, they've been pulled off. They were not on a road. They were pulled off on I think it's some kind of building that they were kind of probably using part of the building for Overwatch on that road. So that IED was not under the road itself. It was under, I think, dirt.
Right.
But what it did accelerate was our understanding of a different type of IEDs that we hadn't seen in Mosul. The culvert made perfect sense. We just hadn't seen that really before, that you would use that under a road to pack with IEDs. The kind of the deep buried underneath the dirt made sense that, you could put something anywhere and detonate it later if coalition forces chose to park there. Again, obviously they weren't there when we parked because those guys were sitting there for a long time pulling Overwatch so that when we left, we would have extra security. And maybe the site just wasn't great. Maybe the site was known to be used by coalition to pull off and pull security from. But no, I think we got on the roads. All the wounded were already gone, and I think we pulled back to Taji.
Self-extracting the vehicles that were damaged.
We towed. I'm sure we towed that MGS vehicle back, or I don't remember having to leave guys out there to wait for a trailer or something like that.
No route clearance came out to clear your route back.
No, this was. You were talking about Fido earlier. We didn't have a ton of route clearance assets till later in that deployment. They were around theater, but then as we started to learn what some of the routes were that were always black, meaning don't go there.
Right.
Black meant like no go, like don't drive there. They spent a lot more of their time on known routes, and we'll get into that. But no, I think we just headed back to Taji.
Okay. So headed back to Taji. I believe the part of Taji, they were kind of sectioned off. We were in the Stryker camp, Stryker base, Stryker something, Stryker city, right?
Sure.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Very appropriate for us. But based out of Taji and Stryker city, what was Battle Company's mission set there? out of Taji.
So I'm gonna make the assumption that we've linked back up by now. That attack company has made it down there because you're talking about the Stryker city, and I don't remember the exact order of places we went to, but we essentially would go to Baghdad for 4 or 5 days, clear a neighborhood, and come back. And so Shabaner were a couple in I think the northeast sector. We went down to I think it's called Fob Falcon, where Rock Company was. We visited them. I think we did a small op in their AO with Charlie Rock. And then I'm kind of skipping ahead. Rustamaya was kind of down in the southeast, if I recall. Route Pluto, that was a black route all the time. So when we were going down there to visit those guys, yeah, we either followed route clearance or took different routes. And the battalion commander's TAC, I think it was the S3, actually, their vehicle did get hit by an EFP, an explosively formed projectile, which was kind of the new hotness at the time for IEDs, some kind of molten copper that would shoot right through almost any metal, tank, Stryker, what have you. So the enemy threats were increasing as far as the lethality
from the IEDs.
And they were using the passive infrared for a lot of the EFPs so that your vehicle would roll by. And as soon as it hit that passive infrared, EFP would fire into vehicle, which is why we put the rhinos in the front to try to detonate it before we got there. Enemy adjusted to that, would aim it in different directions to try to get at us.
And the explosively formed projectiles, what was their believed origin?
Yeah, I mean, they were talking about it even then, and they still talk about it now as far as Iran's influence in that war, that the Shia connection with Iran, that the EFPs were either made in Iran or the technology and the know-how came from folks to the east in Iran, moving into, especially because that southeast sector of Baghdad was very Shia, and that's where the EFP threat was. And so there was probably a lot of ties there with, was it Muqtada al-Sadr and those guys.
Southeast being on the eastern side of the Tigris River.
Yeah.
Just south of Sadr City. Yeah,
within Baghdad. So I would say Shabaner, we're up to the northeast, east side of the river, then like Sadr City, and then like New Baghdad, I believe it was called, Rustamaya, some of the other ones towards the southeast. Okay. But we had operated, like I said, with Rock and Fob Falcon in the west. So we had done stuff all over, but we predominantly, I think, kind of focused on the east side because of those EFP threats and some of the unrest over there. We had got me with a couple stories now. Sadr City one day had something go in. We were called over off some other event, other mission. We go kind of surround portions of Sadr City looking in, and we had some guys on top of a building, and everybody was staying low, and we'd set up stuff on the wall of the building to break up the profile, the outline of soldiers, so you didn't just see a helmet, whatever. Well, again, I guess you get complacent. We were there 2 or 3 hours, kind of waiting for hire to decide what to do. I was in the middle of this rooftop with the Battalion Sergeant Major Huggins, and my head moves, and I hear this crack, and we kind of look at each other, and my head moves again. The bullet had gone by so fast that it displaced the air before I heard the crack, and we were lucky enough to be in the middle of the rooftop, not towards the edge, but we believe somebody from a car trunk had been kind of probably circling and gotten a bead or try to get a bead on us. So that was a close call. Nobody got hurt that day. And then I think we were told to stand down and head back to Taji. But that was a Sadr City story.
Was that part of the great feint into Sadr City that the brigade did, the brigade online? Or was that a separate?
I don't remember.
Do you remember that? Or it was, well, obviously you're saying you don't remember, but I believe I remember seeing on my FBCB2 after, we got the order coming out of, I think it was Liberty, Fob Liberty. There was Rustamaya, and then there was Liberty. We talked about yesterday with Mike Marker. being one of the places that we all had to wear our IBA, our body armor, because they got warned so much.
Rustamaya, they had really strict rules. You had to wear the groin flap.
Right.
I think they want us to wear the DAPs, the shoulder. We're like, no, we're not doing that.
Right.
iPro on the fob, gloves on the fob, knee pads on the fob, and they had some sergeant major run around. If you weren't kitted up, you're getting tuned up.
Yeah. But well, Marker was saying, like, and I don't think any of us really took it all that seriously until the one night when they did drop, 10 or 20 rounds of 120 millimeter mortar on us, as we're getting ready to eat. And I remember Colonel Townsend, General Townsend getting really hot about that. And I think it was the next day, if not the day after, the whole brigade was online, poised to move into Sadr City. But it was a pain.
So a couple more Baghdad vignette stories. We were down in like New Baghdad. There was another neighborhood next to it. I can't remember the name. And that was all Shia. And because Saddam Hussein was a Sunni, he had never funded these neighborhoods. So it was all mud. It was all dirt. And this was Christmas time of 06. I remember on Christmas Day of 06, I think we got 21 separate strikers stuck at one point or another and had to, recover out of this bog that was down there. There were some like little dust ups with some of the Iraqis down there. They were really trying to tell us they didn't want us there, but they weren't like shooting at us that I remember. I think they might have thrown some rocks and might have taken the concertina off your company commander's Stryker while we're down there.
Okay.
That was because I remember he was in my AO for something. Not.
You mean you might have? You mean you did?
Wasn't Captain Barnes, and I remember seeing your company commander in my AO when they were clearing buildings. What are you doing here? Here's what we talk about. It's like, what are you doing here? He's like, I'm doing my mission. It's like, you're in my AO. You're like 2 blocks over. No, I'm not. I pull up the map. And anyways, I think probably while I was talking to him is when his Stryker got like looted, or not looted, but like some Iraqis climbed on top of it because he had left it not secure enough somewhere. Guys were probably taking water cans or concertina wire off the top of it.
Speaking of water cans on the sides of Stryker vehicles, a controversial topic among some people, some circles. What was some of the protective measures that the companies and battalions were kind of coming up with to counter some of the threats that we were seeing down there?
Great question, because again, these things are. I remember exactly what you're talking about very well. The EFP threat. The idea is that this molten copper has so much energy, you want to try to dissipate the energy as it's getting fired at you. So we lined the inside of the Strykers with like spall lining or Kevlar blankets. That was one layer. Had sandbags around different parts of the Stryker. Again, trying to take energy away in case one of these things is fired off at you. And then slurry cans are, I think, a mixture of kind of dirt and water to make mud, probably from World War II, maybe even World War I. And the idea is that we'd hang those on the side of the Strykers along the slat armor on the edges, because that was one more thing that could absorb a blast and slow down the round. And we actually found them to be very effective. A couple of those rounds stopped right in the bench seat before they hit a guy, like meaning whereas they used to go all the way through. Mm-hmm. It absorbed and stopped a few of those. The controversy was, I believe, from General Dynamics saying that we were going to ruin the suspension on the Strykers. And, you're looking at the guys, and I'm not going to tell the guys that. That's not happening. If we ruin a suspension, which we didn't, but if we did, then that's the price of having too much weight on these vehicles. And it made the guys feel better that we were doing everything possible. And they were coming up with a lot of these ideas. It wasn't like the leaders came up with all this. Anything that we could think of to absorb and slow down the energy of those IEDs.
Yeah. I mean, a great point about, guys coming up with some of those ideas. And so, some of them, I thought were rather brilliant. There were And you could kind of tell unit to unit the way trucks were kind of outfitted. Some had glass on them. Some had different types of configurations. Some took the water bottles. Remember the water bottles, the pallets of water that would always just be sitting around, and then just stuff the water bottles between the slat armor and the vehicle.
Yeah.
And there would be some straps on it.
Yeah. The motor variants were open in the back, and they had an incident where somebody threw a grenade into the back, and the platoon sergeant, I think Julian, I think he lost part of his calf. He lived. Anyways, after that, we started putting different camo netting in different ways to, one, break up the personnel in the back, but also that something like a grenade might bounce off and not get all the way into a Stryker hatch or the back of a motor variant.
I believe that was an Automia. I can remember rolling through there a bunch. Every time we went in there, we got a hand grenade thrown at us. I remember finding a cache of just, pile of hand grenades sitting somewhere.
I think I got one more Baghdad one. I mean, other than your questions, which are great, Jim. Blackwater, which was a private security company, had their own helicopters, and they had a little bird. I don't know what it was doing, a small helicopter. And I believe it just crashed. I don't think it was shot down. It might have, but this is again on somewhere in East Baghdad. So we get called out to look for these guys to try to save them. And we're on, I'm sorry, it was Shadow, the scouts, not attached to me again, but doing the same mission. They find 2 or 3 Blackwater bodies laying on the sidewalk, stripped of all their gear. They were dead. I'm assuming they died from the crash, but I don't remember if there's any bullet wounds or anything like that. So we come up to Shadow, and we're linking up with them on Route Wild. And this is like January 23rd. I remember because Tomahawks had a huge fight on the west side of the river the same day, Haifa Street, I believe. They got like worldwide publicity. But anyway, so we're
Tomahawks.
123 infantry out of 32 SBCT, so a sister battalion.
Okay.
I'm located about half a block from here. And so we're told, hey, you got to go in and thermite the helicopter, meaning get rid of all the wreckage. Like, don't let anybody just
pillage,
burn it down.
Yeah.
A thermite grenade is going to burn down the helicopter. So this is a really old area of Baghdad. You couldn't drive in there, had to walk in there. The streets were so narrow. They actually had things made of wood, things you don't see anywhere else, like in Iraq, like that 1,000 years old. I don't know. We're walking on these narrow streets. We find the helicopter. Thermite it. As we're coming out to Route Wild, where we had about 20 Strykers parked, all hell breaks loose from the west side of the street. Basically, they waited. We had a whole company down there. Right. They waited for us to come out. They start shooting at us. We basically had 20 Strykers online and about 150 dudes shooting that way. I don't know. They said later it was about 40 of them shooting back. And again, we don't get anybody hurt that day, miraculously. I was in my Stryker because I was trying to talk to my platoon leaders to try and maneuver to this building to clear it. And I go, okay. I can't hear anybody on the radio because there's so much gunfire. There's so much gunfire. I mean, there's 50 cal shooting. Later I found out there's an AT-4 shot. There's 203s shooting everything. We emptied the inventory that day. I dropped the ramp, which is facing away from the enemy. The camo netting on top of my Stryker is kind of on fire because everything's so hot and rounds going off and things going down. It's like kind of fire above me. And I take a step out the ramp, and some of my platoons were in the buildings behind me shooting again this way. And I see a wire arcing, swinging in front of me like a power line.
Right.
And I see parts of this cinder block building, we'll call it. It's just disintegrating in front of me. And I got back in my Stryker and just kept trying to call guys.
Got back to command and control.
Well, it just didn't look good to run through that.
Right.
Through arcing wire and burning camouflage and a building disintegrating behind me. Anyways, it finally calmed down. And again, we didn't get anybody hurt. But that was probably our largest expenditure of Class 5 of ammo the whole time. I mean, to have the whole company. And we had Apaches en route, but things had calmed down by the time they got there. I mean again, not our AO, not really familiar with it. Just went to find these guys, found them, got rid of the helicopter. On the way out, they tried to hit us, and I think later they said they rounded up about 40 bodies, anti-Iraqi forces, something like that.
That's pretty significant for the time that we spent in Baghdad, because my recollection more so was an operation that we would go on normally, kind of to go into a neighborhood that hadn't been touched in a while, basically get boots back on the ground, influence the American security presence, and then kind of start the clear hole build. 82nd Airborne was flying in throughout the night, but the other part of the violence, aside from the IED threat, snipers, if you stayed in a position too long, as you experienced outside of Sadr City. Fortunately, they weren't very good. We all, I think, took some shots, but they were a little wide. But the violence and the fight that was going on was more so Iraqi against Iraqi. That was the sectarian violence.
Yeah, you'd see dead bodies all over the streets all the time. Revenge killings or trying to make one neighborhood Sunni or make it all Shia. I don't know if you want to call that genocide, whatever you want to call it, but sectarian violence.
And then at some point there, we were in Baghdad, and there was I know there was a definitely an uptick in helicopters getting shot down. To caveat on what you were saying about the Blackwater helicopter that crashed or got shot down,
Yeah.
nobody really knows. But we were transitioning to, you were actually probably starting to get ready to transition out of your command time. Your command time was about up, at least with battle. But we were going to be transitioning to a different mission to kind of help influence some of the helicopters that were getting shot down at that point in time. Do you have any recollection of that, or were you kind of?
No, I don't. I mean, I remember I think there was a Chinook shot down just off one of the airfields. I don't remember getting assigned any of those missions though.
I know I was actually attached to you during one that attack had rolled out to the West Desert. I think we went on a fun little mission with our British friends.
Oh, were you with us on that one?
Yeah, I was your.
Apologies, Jim.
I was your QRF.
Okay. Yeah. So we got attached. Or we were working with the SAS, the Special Air Service for the Brits, which is kind of funny because these guys are smoking cigarettes, drinking tea. They're pretty unassuming looking, but they're badasses. And they wanted us, because I think they basically wanted us to box off a bridge because they were waiting for a high value target to cross it. And we had pro-mask stuff because there was supposedly a chemical threat from this guy. And so we sat down, I think at Rustamaya, I don't know, it could be wrong.
I believe it was, yeah.
Okay. And we sat down there and waited because they were tracking this guy one way or another. And I remember getting called into their little CP, the SAS guys. They're like, no, he didn't get on the road, but we found him at this house. Okay. And it was down along some river. And basically I watched on TV as they dropped a bomb in the house. And I think I saw a motorcycle driving up to the house. And I think I saw that motorcycle flying through the air on the screen. And yeah, he was like number 3 on the Iraq wanted list or something like that. Yeah. So, we all wrote it in our evaluations and our awards that we helped take out number 3, but I don't think we ever left the FOB.
No, we didn't. But we had a nice day.
We were ready.
Nice little trip down there.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting though. I'd say that was that mission stuck out, especially the mission planning, coming to work with you and your company and the way that you worked with your platoon leaders going into the mission planning for it. It was a little bit different than what I had been experiencing. And I was taken aback by it. I didn't get to work for you for a little while until a little bit further on, but it was a good experience. It was a formative experience for things going forward.
Well, I guess I would say that I always believed in collaborative planning. Our intelligence levels are all pretty close to the same. it's our experience levels that differ. So you never know where the best idea is going to come from, meaning the intelligence part of it. And so I always wanted to hear from all you guys and the NCOs on what your thoughts are and how we were doing business. And I wanted to give as much autonomy. And again, Colonel Townsend, General Townsend now retired, really pushed that on us to empower subordinates and to allow you guys to make decisions at your level, because you're going to have to not always ask permission, to not always have to go to higher, because we want you guys trained and ready and confident to make decisions when stuff's happening, whatever that stuff is, bad or good, to take advantage of opportunities, to exploit opportunities, transition points. And we'll get to that a little bit later, because Colonel Antonio taught me something about transition points. And I'm glad you had a good experience with us. But yeah, I knew that all the good ideas did not reside in my head. I did not have a monopoly on them.
I appreciated being a part. I mean, even just coming to be your QRF, and especially taking part in the planning of everybody else's set. So that way I could be the most prepared to understand what anybody else would be doing wherever I would have to reinforce you.
Yeah. If you're getting down to the details, in our rehearsals, we would have every vehicle commander in there, meaning normally E5 type and above. So we knew where every vehicle was supposed to be and had rehearsed what direction they're facing, where they would drop off folks, where they'd pick up folks, what everybody's pulling security on. And when we had time and a big enough sand table, that helped us from getting strikers lost or not knowing, because, once you get off those vehicles, the vehicle commanders are like, if you don't give them guidance, they're going to operate the best they can. But if you've rehearsed something, then it normally made pick up and drop off a lot more effective, as well as security and communication.
So we have been talking about the time that we spent in Baghdad, and all good things must come to an end. Baghdad and your command, you started to wrap it up at some point and transition out of battle company as the battle commander. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, we're at going back a little bit. I don't know what month it was, but we knew HHC was changing out headquarters company in the battalion. And I rarely in my career ever asked for anything. And I said, hey, to Colonel Antonio, I said, can I get a shot at a second command? And he almost acted like he hadn't thought of it, which I'm not sure what that says about me. But anyways, he went and talked to Colonel Townsend, and they said, sure. So February, I think we did inventories in 2007. Captain Anthony Gore was going to follow me. He'd been on the battalion staff. He was going to take battle company. Coincidentally, that my first unit at Fort Drum, he's the current commander at 210 10th Mountain. So he's the brigade commander up there.
Currently today?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So full circle. Yeah.
He just keeps following you around, huh?
And so I do my change of command speech. We got some great pictures, the photos that day that Ray Hernandez set up of all of our strikers and 175 barrel-chested freedom fighters out there. And I go on leave from Taji, which is north of Baghdad. And by the time you get done with those mid-tour leaves, it's almost 3 weeks. It's supposed to be about 2 weeks because of the travel or whatever. I don't remember what I did. I don't remember what happened on leave, but I get back and
you didn't come back here to sunny Fort Lewis?
Oh, I'm sure I came back to the Northwest. I just don't know what I did. But the battalion has moved. I probably knew about it. Somebody probably told me, but 520 was no longer at Taji. Oh, they had like some remnants, like some rear D type stuff for property book reasons, I believe.
Okay.
And the battalion has moved to Bakuba, which was a pretty unknown area to I believe a lot of the battalion leadership, at least at my level. I'm not sure what you remember hearing before we went there. We were all like, hey, this is the surge. I mean, just the beginning of the discussions about the surge, about getting extended. Why are we leaving Baghdad? Isn't that the center of gravity? Not that it had the most fighting, but I just thought that was, if you controlled that, you probably could work your way out from there. But the battalion moved to Bakuba, am rapidly assessing, hearing stories from, all the people I know about. It was a fight from day one for the battalion moving into Bakuba. And so I got a little bit guilt for not being there. I was on leave. I mean, I didn't know, but yeah, so I get there and the battalion is fighting every day. And I don't know if I got back in sometime in March, probably.
Mm-hmm. Did you have to go through Taji and then get sent up, or did you just go direct to Warhorse?
I probably went from Kuwait to Baghdad to Taji to Warhorse.
Yeah. And you were between commands still at that point, or had you already taken over?
No, I think I spent, that was probably another frustrating part. I probably spent a lot of March while you guys were fighting, doing inventories to take HHC.
Okay.
I don't remember what the date was that I took HHC. Might have been the end of March, might have been the beginning of April, but took headquarters company and Colonel Antonia and the staff. They kind of let me, even though it was a headquarters company, I got to maneuver the mortars and the scouts, the 2 platoons. So I got to kind of be a line company commander continuously. I got to be out, and I was happy to be out there with you guys and stop hearing about it on the radio or hearing about it in the evening. I wanted to see what was going on in Bakuba.
So what was your first mission? What was your first experience outside FOB Warhorse going into Bakuba?
Oh, I don't remember if it was the first one, but we had you think you guys had done a air assault like a week prior, cleaned out some palm groves. I wasn't on that one. And then we went Buritz.
Yeah.
I believe the Bronco troop had gathered some good intel down there on stuff going on. And so we had a battalion mission to clear west to east. And I think, one of my first missions is I went with the scouts and we walked into the backside of, Buritz. Backside meaning the east side, meaning out to the east was probably desert or flatland. And to the west was this part of the Bakuba. And I went in there with the snipers, and as attack and battle cleared, I think west to east, we got to snipe some guys that we saw scurrying around that you guys had flushed out. So I thought that was a really solid mission as far as we had surprised them. We had come in behind them. You guys found a bunch of caches during that time, as I recall. And we got some actual dudes, some bad guys, because the element of surprise had worked to get off our strikers and walk in.
Nice. Had you envisioned being as detached from a striker during this deployment as you had experienced?
Yeah, going back to the NTC rotation in 2006 before we deployed, and you said you got there right after that. We had done whatever the largest Razish, I believe is what it's called now in NTC, the largest urban area. Wasn't quite as big as it is now, but it's pretty good size. We had parked on one side of the mountain or hill, and we'd done I don't know if it was a 7 or 8K movement over that and attacked them from the backside. So we had it in our heads already that every once in a while you wanted to get off your platforms and surprise them a different way.
Mm-hmm. Were the guys ready to be as detached from the vehicles, being able to or less dependent on them throughout the course of operations, or was that something that had to be adjusted to?
No, I think they were fine because we had done so many clearance operations where you might be clearing buildings for 3 or 4 days straight on the ground, and the strikers were available, but we weren't riding them. We were walking. So I think we were pretty smart about our load plans, both on our person and on our vehicle. So when we got off, I don't remember having to go back very often for anything. I mean, I think we were pretty sharp on our individual kit and what you need and don't need. Because obviously, some folks in training start with lots and lots of extra garbage that you, after a while, realize you don't need.
So first mission got a couple of kills with the sniper teams out with the scout unit, and that was led by Sean McCaffrey at that time. Mortars, that was Drew Jensen's platoon. After that mission, what was the next set for HHC? Were they still battalion assets that kind of moved at the whims of the battalion, or did you guys kind of fall into an area of responsibility?
No, if I recall right, Buritz was I got to run that for HHC, but I believe as you guys moved your way up Charlie Avenue north, kind of out of the Buritz neighborhood, I believe I was back at Warhorse, and the scouts and mortars were working either for battalion or for one of the other companies. So I don't remember being discovering all those deep buried IEDs that you guys found on Charlie Avenue and the neighborhoods moving north towards Vanessa, Route Vanessa.
That was up then further into Tahrir.
Yeah, Tahrir. And I mean,
you want to?
I don't know. Hopefully we'll stay on camera here. What we're talking about here, there's Tahrir, and this Buritz neighborhood was further south.
I'll hold it for you.
Okay, and the battalion was basically clearing out this area, and this is Route Vanessa here. So kind of got South Bakuba and North Bakuba. Old Bakuba is actually what it was called. So that was the mission, and you can see out here there's not a lot of built up area. So that's what I was talking about. When we sat with the scouts, it was a neighborhood like this, and as Alpha and Bravo cleared, we were able to get some guys in the back there. So thanks, Jim.
Yeah. We'll just take a pause. Thanks.
Okay.
And all the other elements ended up pushing up northward through Tahrir, and continuing to uncover the caches and the deep buried IEDs that were in there. The mission for HHC, Scouts and Mortars, did that transition afterward, or at least after that operation?
So I want to make sure I get all my context here. Up around that Route Vanessa, at the north end, I believe, of Tahrir, was Bone 112. I believe that was their little combat outpost that they had. And I remember in the Warrior Council's evening sessions, getting them more and more integrated. Apache and Bone from 112th got attached to become Task Force 520. But the next, as we moved towards Old Bakuba, that's when I got the Scouts and Mortars back for another mission, a clearance mission with those guys. And one, I remember getting pretty sick out there, and I was laying on a door that was across two sawhorses with my radio and RTO, and just trying to keep situational awareness of where everybody was. I remember laying like that for about 48 hours on my ass. But during that time, and I believe it was the mortars who Drew Jensen, they called me up, it's 2 or 3 in the morning. Hey, we got a guy digging a hole, in the middle of a dirt street. Okay. Yeah, he's probably going to put in an IED. I was like, okay. I mean, you got rules of engagement, like, need to take him out. And the guy ended up, so I'm waiting for like 35 minutes. I'm like, hey, Thunder. That was their call sign orders. What's the update? Yeah, he's just taking a dump. So this guy came within about as close as a human can come to getting killed, sniped, because he was digging a hole in a street in a violent, nasty neighborhood at 2 or 3 in the morning.
Wow.
So that's where that I think is the last mission that I remember with Hound Company, HHC, as far as that I got to control. There might have been 1 or 2 other ones, but that's like when Drew was killed, that he wasn't attached to me that day. They weren't working for me. But yeah, it was great to get the opportunity to not have to be on the fob while all you guys were slinging lead every day. And, you know, I'm hearing the stuff from the attack company platoons and the battle company platoons and the Bronco platoons. And I'm just glad that I could get out there and be, you know, on the ground and be a part of it. And anyways, it would have been rough if I had been stuck back there while we were taking losses. And if I was just doing plans are as important as anything else, but I was glad to be with you guys.
Yeah. And, you know, talking about losses and Drew Jensen, I believe he was shot in Tahrir sometime right around the beginning of May, which coincided with some other significant losses that occurred in attack company. May the 2nd, one of my vehicles was hit on an intersection, wounding a driver, sending him back to the States. May the 6th, 2nd Squad from 3rd Platoon attack company had a catastrophic deep buried IED strike on the same site, losing the entire squad, minus the driver and a Russian reporter. And then fast forward to the 10th of May, we were out, my platoon was out conducting ambush, overwatch, SKT, whatever, however you want to phrase it, on that same site to hopefully get another IED trigger person or somebody in planning when on our exfil with a bunch of detainees who we believe were part of the operation, struck a deep buried IED, bogging us down and requiring our headquarters, our TAC, our company TAC, Captain Parsons and company, to come and bring a record to us when his truck was struck with a deep buried IED, killing his driver, Jason Vaughn, wounding himself and taking him out of the fight for the remainder of that deployment. You know, we were truly grateful as a company to have you come over and step up in that moment, coming for 3rd Command. And, you know, we really appreciate that. And, you know, really love to hear the rest, you know, your thoughts on that sequence of events during that week's period of time.
Yeah. So don't move, Jim. I'm going to pick something up here and we'll get back in frame.
Okay.
It's okay. I'm just going to lean it. So again, I wasn't getting to maneuver those platoons every day, but I did get to a few times in HHC, and everyone was aware of what was going on in attack company and the events you just mentioned. And it was so helpless feeling, you know, to watch that. And, you know, we're picturing one of those events, and there's a little bit more just in a second, but I forget how the conversation started, but Colonel Antonio once again asked Colonel Townsend if he could move me, because he thought, based on my experience at that point, he thought that was probably a better idea than bringing in a brand new company commander to replace yours, who maybe hadn't been in that fight or wasn't as familiar with Bakuba in that area. So the way it went down, whatever our next big battalion op was, the battalion did the op order. We were all there. And at the end of the op order, Colonel Antonio handed me the guidance and says, "You're the new attack company." So I was glad I was taking good notes, because I didn't know I was going to be running the attack company mission. And then either that day or the next day, we did Memorial. And that's pretty much where I shook hands with everybody in the company as they passed through the line, and honored all these gentlemen. And I remember the first mission. I can't remember what the mission was, but it was daytime, and I was walking with remind me, Sergeant Russell's platoon. Was that you?
It was us. Yeah. Second
platoon.
Yeah.
So I was walking with you guys, and I don't know if it was Russell, but somebody said to me, "Hey, sir, do you need something or what?" I was like, "No." Well, almost like, "Why are you with us? Why are you here?" I was like, "Where else am I going to be?" Anyways, I wanted to get to know all you guys, and I wanted to show you guys that I was out there with you guys. There was a lot of little things I think we did to make sure that confidence was inspired in our formations. Presence is one of them. Sharing the hardships or the threats or the, whatever it was. I couldn't imagine being any other place, but that was, I remember kind of getting that, are we in trouble? Why is he with our platoon? And then I go to another platoon and walk with them for a while. And same kind of like thought process was always kind of like, why is the CO here? Why is the company commander with us? Where else am I going to be, man? And I got to see what you're seeing. I got to understand, because again, in Bakuba, I'd only done a couple larger operations. I did not have the knowledge and the experience in that AO that you guys had. And I needed to make sure I understood it very quickly, which included a lot of walking because of the deep buried threat from the IEDs, and all this.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was kind of my introduction to you guys. And what I always, I did not regret, because it was kind of an impossible task in a way, was, I knew everybody's first name in battle company, family members, stuff like that. The two platoons of HHC I got to know pretty well in the short amount of time. There was just so many bodies and so much stuff going on at attack company. I got down to about the team leader level as far as knowing folks' names and knowing something about them to be able to have like some kind of connection. But I never felt like I got really to know the E4 and belows really well. It was just so busy and hectic. And I wish I had, but we were moving. We were punching and jabbing, and so that was hard for me to not feel I felt it, but not to know the actual connection of knowing something personal about everyone in that company.
Yeah. That was something that stuck out to me. We can just leave this right here. Was something that kind of stuck out to me, actually, when you transition into command. And I do recall the ceremony, as it were, basically our battalion op order, and you getting handed the guidon. But having to go to the memorial service after, usually a change of command, it's, in on a high note. Unfortunately, this was in on a much more morbid note, but normally at a ceremony, at a memorial service, the commander usually has to say, says a few words.
Yeah.
And I just like knowing as a person that you had led battle company, you had led in Hound, you didn't really know anybody in the company, but you
I had one secret weapon.
What's that?
The attack company XO, Tim Price, had been one of my PLs.
Yeah. And
Tim and I were close in battle company, had mutual trust, shared understanding, not to sound like a cliche. And so I knew that he would only be saying positive things about me coming over there. So I knew I had one, person at least, regardless of the fact that you'd worked for us once or whatever,
Yeah.
So I had Tim as my secret weapon to lay the foundation for my arrival.
Oh yeah. Oh, and he did, certainly. But just, I believe the strength that you showed in, and leadership and stepping up, and the words that you offered, I can't remember what they were. But but just getting up there and thinking like, man, I don't know if I could, step into a role and then start out, um, paying tribute to, a bunch of people that you didn't lead at that time and you didn't really know, and, how you can inspire people to move forward, but you did. And, you know, I think that set the tone for what was to come for the remainder of our deployment and the time that you spent as our commander.
I want to share something that was like so powerful amongst everything else we've talked about is at those memorials, that one, but other ones we had as well. The air cav guys, I think they were at Biop or Anaconda, the Apaches, the air weapons teams would come out for all of our memorials, and they'd all wear their Stetsons. And it was like the one time I wasn't making fun of cav guys for wearing Stetsons. I thought it was awesome. And they were emotional. They wouldn't recognize any of our faces because they're always up shooting stuff for us. And yet, they came out. They knew the importance of their mission to us, and that we were counting on them. And they did. They did awesome for us that whole time. But that was one thing that stood out for me for those memorials. Their presence. Now Colonel Towns would make it to anyone he could. Anybody that could would go, and you just kind of look around. And I remember shaking guys' hands. I came in the receiving line afterwards, and because everybody's different. Some kids were completely broken up. Other guys were trying to like welcome me, like, hey, sir. Other guys were just, it's another dude, whatever. Like, I didn't take anything from it other than everybody's different. But so right now, all I can do is be present, because I'm not going to give like a rah-rah speech or something like that at the time. That wasn't what we needed. And it was interesting because through all the attack company's challenges, I kind of had my own battle. It's my old company. They seem to be doing okay. And there's some rumors on attack company, not all positive, but you want to make your own assessment. I had to make my own assessment. So I'm out with you guys. I'm walking. I'm doing stuff. We're doing missions, and there was a platoon that was struggling in the company, and there were certain conversations had with that platoon's leadership, and actually, there was a night where I think they were up at Combat Outpost Romeo on the north side of Old Bakuba. And they were supposed to go out and do a mission that night, do a raid or two, and then go back there and report. Well, we get up, it's the next day. Oh no, we were too busy filling sandbags. And this is like the third or fourth kind of weird instance of them, in my estimation, being like a little timid. Anyways, I've been talking to Colonel Antonio, and we removed the PL and the platoon sergeant, sent them to, battalion staff, whatever. Which is hard, but it wasn't we had removed, I think, 3 other PLs in my companies. Yeah, 3 others up to that point. And I'd seen instant improvements every time we did that. And we removed those guys, and overnight, first platoon attack, got back in the fight. And I recognized it in you guys, and I recognized it in 3rd Platoon, and the MGS all felt like we were whole. And it was because of, Lieutenant Vespa, Sergeant Ruiz, those guys came in, and they were just breath of fresh air for that platoon. And all of a sudden the company just kind of took off. And I don't like to compare units, but if we were like a little bit operating a little bit lower than battle, now we were peers. And Captain Gore felt that in battle. He knew he could trust guys. I mean, you were always there and people were always there, but there were some folks that just weren't always there. And now all of a sudden the battalion, everybody was fighting.
Yeah.
And we've been missing that a little bit. And I'm sure you have some, obviously, more perspective because you were living it, but it's fascinating what happens when you replace people sometimes.
Yeah. No, your assessment is spot on. I think that it was widely recognized, and it was recognized, amongst one another for a while, but you know, not necessarily, I don't know, recognized by all. And it was definitely needed change, and unfortunately, it came on the heels of, again, another loss in that platoon. Uh, but definitely necessary. It was, as you said, good to have that hole filled, and made us whole and more lethal, because it was three platoons that you could depend on.
Yeah.
And yes, as well,
Yeah.
they were always there too. Mobile gun system. But as you mentioned, you said you like to walk with the platoons, and you did travel. You like to do a lot of that traveling on your own, or maybe just with an RTO. You didn't really drag a whole tack along with you at all times, and kind of stayed a little bit nimble. What was your thought process behind that? Was that it was a little bit different from what we were used to, so that's maybe where you kind of got that feeling.
Well, one, I'm getting a little trepidation about the question, because it makes it sound like I was assuming too much risk, but I always knew where the platoons were, and I always had visibility and situational awareness of. So if I moved between platoons, I didn't put like the RTO's life at risk, but I also most of the time had Andre Garrett with me, who was a great NCO on my Stryker, and he was a guy who, sitting in the company headquarters, was very frustrated. And when I got there, and he just wanted to win, and he just wanted to help, and so he would have done anything to help attack win. And so if he thought being with me, being my security, and being there to make sure I didn't do something stupid, like take a wrong turn or something like that, he was all about make sure the CO was safe to do his job.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know, necessarily think that we were overly concerned for your safety so much as just like the way that you were able to reposition yourself throughout. And I see that from a complementary perspective, because I think that you were able to be nimble to maneuver versus, the commander that we had previously would have a whole tack, and it would basically be his own little element that was kind of walking around. And for somebody that's maybe a young company commander that might be watching this and trying to figure out, why would I want to do something one way versus the other, or experimenting or something.
Yeah, well, one thing, you don't want to be a target. So if I got too many antennas around me, and then I jump in with you guys, then that looks all bad as far as people that might want to shoot. We did other things, like if we weren't doing an engagement, if I wasn't doing a direct engagement with Iraqis, I would always push out my interpreters to you guys, so you guys had more assets, because you guys were talking to, you got 42 people, whatever, in the platoon. You're talking to a lot of people. I always like to say that those 175 bodies, and that is how big the Stryker companies used to be. That's 350 eyes. That's 350 ears. I mean, there's a lot of sensors out there. So I can't keep all the resources at my level. I gotta try to push those out and empower you guys to get some stuff done at your level. There's just so many stories. There's so many caches. There's so many tripwires. There's so many events and scenarios out there that I can't be there for all of it. But by jumping around a bit, I could get an idea of neighborhoods. Obviously I was trying to get to know the personnel, all your strengths and weaknesses for the company, and see if anybody needed help, or, who did or didn't. And, had a phenomenal first sergeant Goodine, smart guy. He was good about getting around, wanting to, talk to the NCOs, the soldiers, to make sure they were doing the right thing, taking a knee, wearing iPro, all the things we were trying to do to maintain our discipline.
Right.
Tim Price, who we already mentioned, was the XO, making everything happen behind the scenes. He empowered me. You're talking about company command styles. I wanted to be on the net. If I was on the net talking to platoon leaders, I made him talk to battalion. I didn't want to talk to battalion any more than I had to. I wanted to be with you guys. Tim would be listening. He'd relay anything important up to a battalion and keep my head clear for the current fight, the close fight, not the deep fight they were trying to work, from the rear. God bless them. They're doing all the right stuff, but I wanted my focus to be down and in, not necessarily up and out.
That's
which changes by rank, but at that point in time, down and in was the right place to be.
Yeah. That's interesting. Because that was a shift from what the platoons and the platoon leaders were experiencing in terms of the contact back and forth at the company level. More often than not, we had been basically trying to work amongst ourselves on some of those decisions and moving around, where the company commander was a little bit more involved with what was going on at higher levels. So that's another interesting point. So like if there's a young company commander that's listening, you might want to take a note on that. Might be something worth jotting down, because I thought it was, from my perspective as a platoon leader, I found it to be helpful. I could pick up the hand mic and get you, and you had a clear vision on what you were looking for us to do if you weren't already standing next to me.
And for all those people potentially watching, if your battalion commander or your commander of whatever level at echelon is solid, you don't need to talk to them all the time. They know. They see the results. Meaning I didn't need to convince Colonel Antonio of anything. He would see that attack company was doing real well. And and he would tell me if we weren't. And that's the only conversations we need to have. Other than that, company focused, Tim Price up, and obviously Tim's a rock star, so they got everything they need out of him.
Yeah, Tim juggled a lot. I guess so. Not only I would say in Bakuba we didn't get to see Tim so much on the ground because he was mostly ushering all the vehicles around, and then talking to battalions, sending reports up, and making sure all of our logistics were in place, especially when we would go out on some of those operations, some of those longer operations. But there was a lot of fight between operations. Was there anything to the design between operations of what our set would be? I know after we took over Cop Romeo up in the northern part of Old Bakuba, any thoughts you'd like to share on that?
Let me get into something. We'll do one more, I guess, advice or TTP or recommendation.
Go for it.
That the Army has a lot of different ways of looking at the company level at XOs and first sergeants, and some of the mindset is that first sergeants are beans and bullets and admin. In 520, the first sergeant is the senior warrior in every company. I need the senior warrior to be doing senior warrior stuff, which is out with the guys. Make sure they're doing the right thing, helping platoon sergeants and squad leaders lead, giving them some advice. My XO, while he could fight and at times he had to and did, I put all that on those guys. And it's a great way of officer development too, to let your XO kind of figure out how the battalion operates, to have that interface, whether it's logistics, like you just mentioned, or admin, or making sure people have graphics, in their vehicles, whatever it is. So that's one piece. But the set, transitioning to a slightly different topic, the set, one, recognize the personnel tempo, meaning the how busy we were was hard to maintain. And guys uniforms are falling apart. We're getting ready to start an extra 3 months on top of 12 months for the 15-month surge. So we went to a 4-platoon set. 2 platoons would never leave the city. 2 platoons would always be maybe one at Cop Romeo and one out bouncing around houses, so the enemy never could kind of get a beat on us. Another platoon would be on QRF from Warhorse, and the 4th platoon would be in recovery. And these were 24-hour phases. So you knew every 4th day you'd get 24 hours to do maintenance, go wash yourself, get on the internet, get on AOL or whatever we're using at the time. Not many cell phones. MySpace, yeah. And the QRF knew their job because they were living it all the time. And the two platoons, we had to keep that presence because the enemy would just keep filtering in if we commuted to work. If we drove into the city and left and drove and left and drove and left, all IEDs would get planted, people would get shook down, killed, assassinated, all kinds of badness. So we always had two platoons. I think for a couple months, unless we were doing a battalion out, where all four platoons would be out. But that's how we, and that was basically just like a kind of like a rest cycle that I thought was necessary for where we were in the deployment. But I also thought it was necessary to keep 50% of the folks out at all times. And I would bounce back and forth, like you said, between the two platoons out. We would normally give them kind of missions if they weren't doing a raid or something to keep moving, and just, we called it collecting atmospherics, to kind of see what the mood of the neighborhood, night and day. And one thing that was really effective for us was, and you guys developed this at your level, it wasn't my idea. A platoon would go occupy a house or two, say at 2200, and then they'd move again at 02 or 03. So if the enemy saw you go into one, they're like, oh, that's where they are. And then the next day they'd be someplace else. And that led to all kinds of opportunities and exploitation. There's some stuff that happened up north a little bit later in the story, but they were confused. They could not pin us down what we were doing, where we were. And we were kind of like water. We were just flowing everywhere all the time and never stopping.
Yeah. Yeah, until you just brought that up, I forgot that we used to do that. And, the intention would be to hopefully, especially because attack was in Old Bakuba, our terrain was a little bit different because it was the seat of the city. It was the older roads, no grid planning. Like Tahrir was north, south, east, west. I mean, some of our roads were a little narrow and winding. Houses didn't match up with one another. But to try to get to a position to overwatch the house that we had previously occupied, maybe catch somebody trying to set up on what we had been in. But yeah.
The other thing I didn't mention in that 4 platoon set was that the lines of communication from a warhorse to us had to be held by our forces at all times. So there was tanks on, I guess that's still Vanessa, that would head north up to Warhorse. There was tanks holding that Victory at all times. And then onto Vanessa and into Old Bakuba, we had Strykers placed mutually supporting, so that if we had to drive in or out medevac or just replacement or whatever, we always we had a safe route in and out.
Yeah. And we always had, to get to Romeo, there was that S curve in the road that went up. So we always had that intervisibility of what happened, whatever was in the S curve.
Yeah.
I remember I shared a TTP with you once about how we reduced an IED just short of the S curve. My driver, Alex Petty, all the credit in the world. He, I told his job, aside from driving the vehicle and wherever I told him to, was to watch the street. And if he saw something that was out of place, don't even disregard whatever I said, just stop before we end up running into something. And he slammed on the brakes before we were driving up north to that S curve. And I was a little hot, like, what are you doing? Just slamming on the brakes. I think he checked me into the front of the hatch. But there was a pothole that was covered in a piece of blue tarp. And, Bakuba being what it was so kinetic anyway. I just instructed my gunner to interrogate it with the 50 cal, and lo and behold, it was explosive. But
it's a technique.
It was a technique. I remember making that call up to regular X-ray that we interrogated and reduced one IED. There were a lot of questions for me about that, but I think that was a TTP. I think you had a little bit of success with over there in the S curve too afterward. Maybe
you'd have to refresh my memory.
No. Oh man, I could have swore that you found at least one or two the same way, but on your visits up.
I'm not trying to be coy. I don't remember, but I do. This is the story I thought you were going to tell. we were on the west side in Platoon doing clearing operations, south to north. We'd left old Bakuba towards the end there, June or July. And,
Ripper?
Yeah, I guess that was part of Arrowhead Ripper. And so this is multiple days. This is ongoing. Off the vehicles, living in the streets, living in buildings, I should say. And 2 or 3 in the morning, Lieutenant Dobus, Jim Dobus here, finds a courthouse and a torture chamber, like in a basement. Meaning you've got all the files to say that they've been running their own kind of night court, and then there's like drills and other heinous torture devices and evidence. And it's 2 or 3 in the morning, and at some point you're like, "Hey, can we destroy it?" Yeah. So you guys get out. I think you guys dropped a JDAM or something on it, blow it up, call it in. And then the battalion commander calls me either at 04, maybe the next morning. He's like, "Hey, TAC 6, this is regular 6. Yeah, yes, sir. Yeah, did you guys destroy like a courthouse and a Al Qaeda courthouse and an Al Qaeda torture chamber last night?" It's like, "Yes, sir." "Did you think we might want to bring in public affairs or somebody to kind of exploit that and take some pictures?" And I was like, "Yeah, probably, sir. Sorry about that." And I mean, I was already past it, right? It was like the next thing. But, thinking back on it, he's 100% right. But, we're just moving. We're moving, and like, yeah, I don't want some torture chamber in our AO. Yeah, I want them to know that's not okay. So you guys drop it. He's right, but just one of those things that happens amongst 96-hour operations, whatever those were.
I think hindsight being what it was, at least, at that time, when we found that, was a little bit beyond the first 24 hours.
Yeah,
because the first 24 hours of Arrowhead Ripper, they were like amazing. Sean was talking yesterday just from the blocking position that they had been in south of Cocoon, looking north and seeing Spectre gunships and JDAMs and just the layers of air support and indirect fire that were coming into there. Well, I remember driving up and seeing 2 air weapons teams of 4 Apaches each circling, doing God knows what they were doing. But
God and country,
amazing stuff. But as we started to push in, I know my platoon was a little bit more aligned to where they were projecting the enemy stronghold was going to be. I remember sitting down in the planning process with you, and you would come up with, just asking me, just like teasing the ideas out, like, "Jim, what do you think if we put in some TRPs and add some smoke and like did all this stuff?" Let's if they're giving us all this rope to play with, then let's play with all of it. But we found just in the first set of rows of neighborhood, because they were all kind of, you'd move north about 5 or 6 blocks, and then there was about a 300-meter open field, another 5, 6 blocks, another open field. Incredible infrastructure to support their war. I mean, we were in their command and control center, their hospitals, surgical centers, things like that.
Oh, they had fields of fire. There was open ground. Like you're talking about the smoke,
right?
We did a 7-round linear sheath, which is like 7 rounds of big smoke, so we could cross that. Right. Even though we weren't getting shot at that moment, we just didn't trust that open ground to go to the next, built up area.
Right.
Hopefully you'll get a chance to interview some of the fires guys. But to our knowledge, we called in the first Excalibur 155 GPS guided round on an identified parapet on top of one of those buildings. A parapet, something they could watch out from, maybe snipe from, fortified position on top of a building. And that Excalibur was time on target. That thing was,
remember that?
I do remember that.
Yeah. That was insane. I remember being right there with you. They said that we could get within 150 meters.
Yeah. I tell people that, they're like, they kind of look at me. I was like, I know, we're in a building. They said we were good.
Yeah. And it just came, You could see it through the eyes because I guess the trail of, whatever's burning off the ground as it's coming down through the building.
I might have had my head down already. I don't know.
I watched that thing go
Okay.
right through.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I couldn't take my eyes off of it.
Yeah.
But again, even just for the planning of that, you brought me along with you, to go and brief Colonel Antoni and Colonel Townsend, back. I guess we were also supposed to talk to General Odierno. But, you know, another leadership lesson, just, making your subordinates kind of a part of everything that,
Yeah.
that goes into stuff.
Yeah.
It was good. It kind of made the operation feel whole as well.
Even if you guys aren't briefing, you got, bringing you guys to stuff at higher levels. I may not hear everything. I may not get a note on everything. So just more eyes and ears to, obviously I trusted all you guys, and you guys might have caught some stuff in the higher briefs that maybe I missed. And, that's what made us successful, was just all being involved in the collaborative planning.
The boys really felt it too, because they had the confidence in the plan that, like, every level is taking part in what's going to happen right now, because we'd sat in the position. We thought we identified this parapet.
Yeah.
And I remember you came over and sat with us while we were watching people going back and forth from it. And it was like, okay, well, before we cross this field, let's make sure that we get everything.
Yeah.
We set all of the conditions in our favor.
Yep.
We're not going to go now. We'll wait till first light. We'll try to drop that building. And then when we went and briefed it, and we were like, Colonel Townsend, very, very easy to sell on hammering the enemy.
Well, he knew we were firing main tank rounds and other and JDAM stuff before that. So he knew the environment up there.
Yeah. Because the ROE was different than the rest of the country. And, it's kind of some of the things that I've been explaining as I've been working with these guys from the debrief project, from 112 and the Wolf Pack. We had exposure to what the ROE was in Baghdad.
Mm-hmm.
I think we weren't allowed to use our Mark 19 without having some certain level of approval, perhaps maybe a company command level. I don't know. But is there anything?
No, just that, rules of engagement. Everybody think that, not everybody. Some think that, it's just restrictive, and no, I mean, depending on the environment, identify the threat, reduce the threat with commensurate force. And the threat is snipers. Like, I'm not going to let the guy snipe at us. We're going to obscure our movement, and we're going to make sure he doesn't have a vantage point to shoot from. Mm-hmm. So, that was, we used everything. We brought in an A-10 Warthog, took out some farmhouse full of Al-Qaeda guys during that operation. I think Tim Price ran that up. We used everything at our disposal to accomplish the mission and make sure we all got back safe. Go ahead, Jim. Now, I was thinking, so towards the end there again, there was a night, and we were all out in the north of Old Bakuba. And I forget what the mission was, but it's probably, I do know. I was supposed to go talk to a water purification plant operator. She was supposed to have some intel or something like that. And, so I go with some guys. We probably don't meet with her at her house because, that would get her killed. We meet with her somewhere. And while I'm talking with her, or maybe the humiters are talking with her, the tactical humiters, the intel folks, some of you guys say, hey, we got like 8, 12 guys in the middle of the street with guns. Bad guys. It's like 2 or 3 in the morning. And then I don't even know what we said, but you guys lit it up because they were identified enemy. They weren't Iraqi police. They weren't Iraqi army. And so as we kind of went through what we thought was happening there, we think they were probably gathering to do something against us either that night or the next day. But they were gathered up, and they were in the open, and they didn't know because we were north of where we normally operated, kind of no man's land. And so as we're kind of consolidating, again, battalion commander calls me and goes, "Are you guys going to pursue?" I'm like, "Pursue what, sir?" He's like, "Yeah, those guys moved north. We got UAS up, unmanned aerial system. or some kind of eyes. Oh, I mentioned the word transition. This was a transition where we had come upon something we normally didn't see, which was a bunch of guys who didn't see us in a large number with weapons, positive identification, took care of that. I guess they had a couple squirters. And anyways, over the next couple of days, we followed north and found their training camp up north where they had suicide vests, boxing gloves, all kinds of training aids and devices. And they've been kind of just up there because we never operated up there. It wasn't part of the AO. It was just north of there. So that was an exploitation and a transition.
I think that was Chibernot.
Yeah, sounds right.
Yeah. I recall, I think you were with First Platoon out for that, because I remember hearing the story. I guess they were going to make entry into the building, and you had to, somebody was trying to put the light out and you ended up shooting it out or something.
There was a couple street lights.
One shot.
There was a couple street lights, and I'm talking to this woman and I hear, pow, pow, or crack, crack. Excuse me. And I go upstairs to the roof. I'm like, what are you guys shooting at? Because there's no radio call. Oh, we're trying to take out the streetlights, sir. It's illuminating our position. Ping, ping, took them both out, went back downstairs. I don't know. Those lights are probably hard to replace, but the guy's safety was important to me at the time. So but it was just funny. They were like shooting. I was like, are you guys zeroed? What's going on here? Like, what?
Yeah, I think we had an interesting mission before you came to us, the German hostage rescue. I don't know if you ever heard of that, but allegedly there were some German hostages at some point in Iraq that were believed to be in a farmhouse up there that we went to go do a raid on, and to get these hostages out. And we had a lot of activity that was kind of north that the air weapons team had engaged, trying to flank onto us. But we had been hearing rumblings of folks having been up there. But, I can recall that when you were up there with First Platoon, and then the transition basically was whatever we were doing. It was like, I might've been on the fob, but we came right out, and then we just moved into a clearance at that point.
Yeah, moved into clearance. And I don't know if it was that.
They found 2505, the company from the 82nd, that they came to do an air assault in, I think, as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, what I remember was there was a field to the north that either during Ripper or that mission had been used before for like air assaults. And it was completely mined, IED'd, like, because they'd seen us use it before. And I'm not sure if that was during Ripper somebody found that, because I don't think it was us that day or that night or that mission. But yeah, it could have been a bad day for somebody.
So post Ripper, post this operation, what were your impressions on Bakuba and the direction that it was moving?
Yeah, so we had cleared south to north of all of Bakuba. We'd left the platoons out there every day. Battle companies doing the same thing to our east. So we had good continued presence. And I can't remember what the event was. Well, there was an event. We had the mortars attached to us. And they lost Private Miller. He got sniped as we're clearing south to north. And we called in the Apaches, and the guy said, hey, that he was sniped from the Blue Dome Mosque. I said, okay, no more Blue Dome Mosque. And got no pushback from battalion, put a couple Hellfires in there. And what I'm getting at is, took out the sniper, confirmed a week later with some kind of satellite imagery, the sniper round had indeed come from the mosque. They had used it. So you're thinking there might be some blowback based on what everybody was talking about in Iraq. Like, you can't go into a mosque. You can't do this. You can't do that. Well, within like 24 hours of that happening, everyone came back to Old Bakuba. Old Bakuba had been like a ghost town for months. Like, ghost town. Nobody living there. Nobody working there. No stores open. No nothing. And sometime shortly after we blew up that mosque and that sniper, thousands of people. Like, we were worried. Like, we're like, there's too many people around. Like, like, are we safe? But they were selling their vegetables. The Al Qaeda guys had gotten pushed back to the north. we'd taken the gloves off, showed them we meant business. And that's when all those hearts and minds kinds of operations really started to, like we'd pay somebody to clean up rubble. We paid somebody to paint the fountain, which ended up being pink,
right?
The pink fountain.
Yeah. And Katie Couric come out with you?
It was Alexander Zarvis, I think, worked for LA Times.
Okay.
It was not Katie Couric, but yeah. And just, they were cleaning up the streets. We paid for part of it, but they just were doing a lot of stuff on their own because they were so happy to be back in their environment. And, we were not always good at identifying who was who, but at this point in time, it was pretty obvious that these guys were not scared to come back because obviously we had pushed out somebody they didn't want to be there.
Yeah. For sure. Deployment started to wind down at that point. And we were starting to head back. Any of your reflections on that period of time coming out and transitioning back to the United States?
Yeah, well, we ripped with another Stryker unit, I believe, kind of around Bakuba. I remember 423. Anyways, that was one of the battalions. We go back to Taji once we rip with them, and then we're given some missions to go do right seat, left seat rides with people in Baghdad. And as you know, we were only in every Baghdad neighborhood for like a week at a time. We're all kind of looking at each other like, we're taking people in areas that we don't know that well. We hadn't been there since like December. Now it's July and August. And I just felt like a little, like we weren't setting them up for success because we didn't know what we didn't know.
Right.
They hadn't been there in 6 months. And I believe when the 123 had a Stryker hit pretty hard during that time when they were doing the same thing, showing people around other units. So I remember being like completely kind of frustrated with how that was going because, again, I felt like we were doing them a disservice, but there was nobody owning that battle space. So we were like the only people to do it. So we did the best we could to show people what streets we thought sucked, which ones might be safe, how to follow route clearance, how to, how to use the CPOF to identify your routes before you go and then be meticulous in your planning to get to and from.
And the CPOF is?
Command Post of the Future, which I don't think the Army's finally started not using it, but it was.
We're in the future.
Yeah, it was an extension of, your icons on a computer screen, so we could track vehicles and events, and you could populate if you thought a route was dangerous or not. Okay. You could populate where attacks were happening, and so you would go in and look at this before you'd ever leave the fob, so that you had a better idea of the safest way to get to where you're going.
Okay.
So I think I'm roommates on Taji now with Tim Price, and I don't think Tim was in the room, and it's 2200 at night, something like that. And bang, 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 metal doors on these rooms. And, that didn't happen often. And we were towards the end. There wasn't a lot of people banging on my door. It's the battalion commander. And he just looks at me. He says, Drew Jensen died. So Drew had been shot in May, and he'd been evac'd, and he was still alive. And I think based on the potential quality or lack of quality of his life, he kind of made some decisions. So essentially, we all thought he was alive, but just going to be severely injured. But he died, I think, in September or late August. And anyways, it was a weird way to end, or getting towards the end of the deployment, to be like, okay, we got all of our guys, we're almost there. And that happens. The other event that happened in those last couple of weeks, maybe a month before that, now is right around then. He might have been in your platoon. I get a Red Cross message, through the battalion. Some E4's wife had died, stateside. And you want to talk about one of the most surreal conversations I've had in my entire life, is me and the first sergeant First Sergeant Goodine, sitting on emery boxes outside a tent with this E4 who's just spent 14 months just slugging it out, living, thriving. And, I mean, I was having a hard time even controlling, not like crying emotion, but like just all these emotions. How do you tell this guy? And I said, hey, your wife passed away. You know, he's probably 27, 25.
You know, oh no, he was younger than that.
Yeah.
He's such a sad bookend, because he had gone home on emergency leave at the beginning of the deployment for the birth of his child.
Yeah.
Basically right after we got to Mosul. I mean, probably within days of arriving in Mosul, and this was about a couple of days before we left.
Yeah. So between that and the Drew Jensen information, it was a bizarre bookend to getting home. And then, as you know, and you know, we got to share this kind of stuff. When we get back, the guys are living off of adrenaline and testosterone and hypervigilance, and they're getting in fights at restaurants and bars with people. You know, just affronts or thing. And sometimes they're going to jail, or sometimes they're getting their asses beat. And you're just trying to talk to guys. Hey, man, you already proved everything. We're good. But that living like that for 15 months, that hypervigilance is, it doesn't just turn off and on, as you know, a lot of our audience knows. But just trying to coach guys through. I mean, not like I had all the answers, but,
Right.
you know, hey guys, you're plenty tough. You don't need to look for any trouble. You know, just try to enjoy your families, your friends, you drink some beer, whatever, but you don't need to be fighting.
Yeah. It's something that we've been talking about, at the Debrief Project, kind of some of the transitioning, back out, from a combat zone. You know, I think a lot of thought and effort has been placed on how units deploy post-Vietnam, realizing like there were units that were deployed to Vietnam that just got replacements throughout, that, you know, going forward, a unit would deploy whole and then redeploy.
Excuse me.
So that way there was some sort of camaraderie. But I would say, reflecting upon it, like how we came back, you know, we had our bit of dwell time in country. I personally probably would have preferred, instead of spending 2 weeks screwing around there, just come home at that point. But having time with the same crew together, as opposed to changing commands, and NCOs leaving to go to, you know, wherever, if they were going to BNOC, if they were going to become a recruiter, or go do whatever. You know, I think there was a lot of people that were kind of festering and lost some leadership, some oversight that they probably more desperately needed.
Yeah, we were doing PT and we were released by noon every day. So whatever guys were, you know, they had 18, 20 hours a day to do their own thing.
Yeah. So did you go on any more combat deployments after you came back from?
No. So we got back in 2007, and I'm supposed to go to the Middle East next year. Be my first trip in quite a while. And
what would you be going as?
I'm going as the Deputy Commanding General for maneuver for the 36th Infantry Division.
Okay.
And so Operation Spartan Shield has kind of been the enduring mission over there that does command and control for kind of multiple countries and resources, and just so we kind of maintain a presence in that part of the world to help keep a lid on and monitor everything that's going on. So I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but if that's the last thing I do in my Army career, it'd be a pretty interesting bookend on that side.
Okay. And the 36th Infantry Division, where are they out of?
They're out of Texas Army National Guard, Camp Mabry.
Okay.
And we actually have
do these boots have anything to do with that?
The Lucchese's are from El Paso.
Okay.
And I was recommended to get a pair when I first got there, and I said, "Roger that." You
haven't taken them off since?
I haven't taken them off. No, I just want to give credit to the division that we have units in Washington, Mississippi, Tennessee, New Mexico, and Texas. You know, over 25,000 soldiers. So it's been a whirlwind for me so far. It's an honor, and I share a lot of the stuff with those guys that we just talked about. You know, teach, coach, mentor. You know, whatever I can do to add value. That's kind of where I see the role.
That's great. That's fantastic. And you've obviously you've made it to this level of command. You've commanded probably at every level in between since company command, battalion, and brigade.
Yeah.
Here in Washington State.
Yep.
You know, we all sincerely thank you for your continued service, you know, to our nation, the National Guard, and whatever states you represent and continue to represent going forward. You know, one of the final things that we like to do is ask if there's anybody in particular that you'd like to give a shout out to, from at least from Bakuba, or, you know, in your life, family, friends, leaders, whomever else. And then, you know, if there's anything else that you'd like to just share, is, you know, if there's one thing you could tell your former self, going into the career that you went into, to the fights that you've been into, what would you tell your former self?
Well, first off, I mentioned a lot of names. And if any of you I didn't mention by name, I don't know, LaBrosse or whoever, I apologize. But the shout out goes to all you guys, you, Jim, for helping run this project, and to Bobby, for keeping some of these memories alive. I know you got a couple more interviews today, and that's fantastic. I really appreciate that you guys are, I'll try to capture this so that, you know, whoever's interested can see and maybe kind of experience it through a different lens. But what I would say, I think you said final comments about, if I could share anything, it would be, you know, the Army does a pretty good job of trying to make leaders, but leadership exists everywhere in the civilian side, everywhere in the military. It exists in every rank in the military. It's not just you're a leader because you're this rank. And what I mean by that is we all have to make decisions at times, and you just want to be as well prepared as possible. You want to be disciplined in your approach and whatever you're doing. I mean, you talk to successful business people, you know, there's a discipline in their approach. There's, you know, leadership. There's listening to people. We've talked a lot about that, listening from the bottom up, collaborating with people, trying to find new ideas. So the advice is, you know, be open-minded, listen. You know, half of communication is listening. The other half might be talking, but half is listening. And don't be afraid to try new things. And what I mean by that is, we tried a lot of different training techniques, you know, in the lead up, saw what worked, what didn't work. When it didn't work, our bosses didn't fillet us. You learn from your mistakes. And your post-traumatic growth is a big thing in life. And that comes from all kinds of failure. We almost always learn and get better from failure. So don't be afraid to try something and to fail. Just try not to do it in combat.
Well said. Well, sir, I greatly appreciate your time, and wonderful getting to see you again. You know, here it's only been a couple of years since we last saw one another, and looking forward to seeing you again.
I'm looking forward to it too, Jim. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
That's it. Well done, man.